I'm aware of the fact that a lot of my irritation from this scene comes from the fact that they call it donating. What you gonna donate? Your dick? Your sperm? Take it away from my welcoming body. Hello and welcome to my channel. It's me, Katja, and this is Obviously Queer. Today I will be doing a spoiler-free review of The Darkness Around Us by Eliot Schrefer, but this will also be a kind of video essay regarding one scene in this book and the kind of thoughts and feelings that awoke in me. It's not really a video essay, it's basically just me talking about the subject, which is so enjoy. But I will start with the book review. The Darkness Around Us is a sci-fi romance by Eliot Schrefer. So a synopsis, I'm terrible at synopsises, but what you gonna do? So this book is about Ambrose, who is a 17-year-old top astronaut in the year of, I think, 2247 or something like that. The world is now separated into two countries. It's the United States of America and Russia. I'm just kidding. It's Federation. The flag was still there. And Democratia. The world is going under due to climate change, and 7 years prior to this book, the USA, I mean Federation, sent one of their top astronauts to the moon to see if that's a good place for the rich to live. This was Ambrose's bigger sister. Unfortunately, the mission didn't go very well and they've heard nothing from her. She just disappeared into space. Until now, 7 years later, when they get a distress beacon from her aircraft. So they send Ambrose to look for her on this rescue mission, but this mission is too expensive for one country to finance, so they do it together with Russia. I mean Democratia. So he goes there together with another 17-year-old astronaut, KODIAK. Ambrose is a pretty typical YA protagonist. He has this very chatty inner monologue. He's a bit hysterical. He comes from this super privileged family. His mom is basically this female Elon Musk super tech leader. KODIAK is more of a loner. He comes from this orphanage. Who's kind of produced fighters and soldiers and astronauts. So this is marketed as a sci-fi romance. It's more of a sci-fi than a romance. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a thrilling, exciting read. Mostly I think I enjoyed it so much because I didn't expect it to be as dark as it was. I love a character and relation-driven story. It's always the most important part for me. This book was very interesting to me because I really liked the story, but I didn't like the characters. KODIAK and Ambrose, they're not for me. I didn't relate to them, I didn't feel with them, but I still enjoy the book, so that was really interesting for me. I really like the mystery. If you read the book, you know what I'm talking about. There is a lot of what the fuck moments, but I do unfortunately think that KODIAK and Ambrose lacked any kind of chemistry. KODIAK did have a personality and that could have taken up so much more space. And the relationship between KODIAK and Ambrose, it felt so rushed. I love an enemies to lovers story. There was so much potential for good enemies to lovers, for drama and conflict. There is a lot of build-up to KODIAK being borderline homophobic, and I'm allowed to say this because I'm homosexual, but a little bit homophobia is a little bit hot. Sue me. I just feel like it's a lost opportunity when he's not at least a little bit homophobic. Because one of the biggest differences between those two characters is that they come from different countries. And the States, I mean Federation, is super progressive and everyone is queer. I'll get to this part. And Russia, Democratia is old school, they're stuck in the old way of living, they have like so many gender norms left. So the differences between the countries and the differences between those two plays a major part in the book. And it's also the background to the scene that I wanted to talk about, which is the scene after Ambrose and KODIAK have sex for the first time. Wait, did you mean my first time at all, or my first time welcoming? Welcoming? What does that mean? What we just did. You donated, and I welcomed. It's a hierarchy, KODIAK. Top and bottom are not value-neutral terms. One implies more worth, which is all about homophobia, and homophobia is really all about misogyny. That's also a really hard word to say. Because in the Mcquistion eyes, to welcome is to be female, and to be female is to be lesser. Words matter. That was Ambrose's first time welcoming, by the way. It sounds like a riddle. Two tops are in space together. So I know what Eliot, the writer, wants to say with this scene. I mean, it's literally word by word in the scene. What's the point of this scene? So before I get into my discussion about this, I just want to say that I know that Eliot is a gay man and I'm a simple lesbian. So I know that he has like tolkningsföreträde. I don't know how the fuck you say that in English, but I still think this scene is bad, and I still think that it's written in a way that is quite unnecessary and quite counterproductive to its purpose, basically for two reasons. So let's talk about those two reasons. Welcome to another episode of me talking about things that are literally none of my business. Okay. I just want to say that in this video, I say dichotomy instead of dichotomy, which is apparently how you say it. I don't have the energy to dub myself or like correct that. So in this video, it's called dichotomy and not dichotomy. This is my channel. I can do whatever I want. Society has put too much value into the dichotomy of top and bottom, and being bottom is worth lesser because you are taking it. You are being a passive female part of the sex.
I'm homosexual, Francis. Well, I'm a giver, right? Not a receiver. There's a difference. I'm not a faggot.
This is a huge deal in gay communities, and it is sprung from heteronormativity and homophobia. There must be a giver and a taker in a relationship, a man and a woman in a sexual relationship. Otherwise, it's not real sex. My question arises from if the point of this scene is that this subject and the extreme divide between top and bottom should be put into question. Why is it necessary for Ambrose to tell us, the reader, that he has bottomed for the first time? I mean, welcome. I just want to make this clear. I don't think there's anything wrong with characters being explicitly top or bottom on page. Characters could be that for a number of reasons that is necessary for the story, the characters, or just because they want to shed more light onto bottom proudness, for example. There is a small movement with, for example, Lil Nas as one of its very clear head figures. And there's also, for example, my favorite meme account, The Perks of Being a Wall Bottom, who use their bottomness and their proudness in being a bottom for humoristic purposes, and also to own that bottomness and the specific discrimination that bottom gays gets put through. Being a proud bottom is important for, challenging masculinity and challenging norms within the gay community.
Fuck it, let's ride.
I don't think this is Ambrose being like a proud bottom. I don't understand why it's put into text in this scene where the point is to tell us that Ambrose comes from a queer utopia. In Federation, we have come to a point in society where being non-binary is just as any other gender identity. Everyone is pan, women are in leader positions doing awful things. Equality is really fucking up there. And on top of this, we're told that Ambrose is a fuckboy. But still, he's never bottomed. Again, sex scenes can be added to a story for a number of reasons and have explicit positions mentioned in them. Take, for example, the contemporary queer icon Casey Mcquiston, both in One Last Stop and Red, White and Royal Blue. The sex scenes is there just for the purpose of sex. We follow two people who fall in love, and in time with that they also have sex in different ways, and it's described because it's hot, because it's non-dramatic. It's a part of their life and their relationship. In Red, White and Royal Blue, it's also explicit who's the top and who's the bottom, but I think that that's written without any kind of value to who does who. It's just there because it's like a normal part of the relationship. Like, they're gonna fuck and like someone's gonna get fucked. And as said, sex can also tell us something about a character dynamic. Like, I can't believe I'm gonna talk about All for the Game on my YouTube channel, but I'm just gonna talk about All for the Game because I do think that the sex is really interesting. I think that's an example of sex that's really put there to tell us a lot about Andrew and Neil and their relationship. I'm all for sex in the book if it feels like it makes sense, but the thing is that in the darkness around us there are no sex scenes. It's a fade to black sex scene, or it's a reference to sex. It's never explicitly on page because this is not that kind of book. So everything that is told about the sex, it's not told during the sex act, it's told to us as readers afterwards. So that Ambrose bottomed for the first time again, like, why is it necessary to add? What does it add to the story? Because it's not there just for the sake of sex. And I know the point is to tell us the top bottom has misogynistic undertones. I think this scene is quite counterproductive because it doesn't challenge our views on the top-bottom dichotomy. What I'm trying to say here is that the point of this dialogue is to challenge the way that we think about top-bottom. Still, it's put on page that these two men, stereotypical, masculine, successful fuckboys, both identifies as tops. I just feel that's disappointing. Imagine this scene, but if they were bottoms. That would have been a norm-breaking scene with norm-breaking characters. But Eliot makes it clear that these are tops. And Ambrose still bottoms when the time comes. And he's the shorter man. He is the softer man. So where's the actual norm-breaking choices in this scene? There's a lot of talk and not so much action. This is just playing right into our heteronormative expectations. And while telling the reader that he bottomed, even though it wasn't on page, you were also letting us know something that's really none of our business. And that brings me to point 2, why this scene is interesting to talk about from a queer analytic point of view. The fetishizing, I can't say that word, of gay men in fandoms, and how fans, both of popular culture and of real people, think it's their right to know who's the top and who's the bottom in a relationship. I'm very interested, or what to say, in the subject of fetishization of gay men in fandoms. Again, I am a lesbian woman, and I'm not an expert in any way on this area, but I did write my bachelor thesis in cultural theory about women writing slash. So I do have a lot of like academic knowledge about this subject. This was an interview-based essay with cis women who wrote mostly or preferred slash fanfiction, as it was called in 2017. Like, no one says that anymore. Like, everyone says MLM. The question was like, why? Why do you prefer this? Why do you write this over, for example, heterosexual love stories or lesbian love stories? It's a complicated subject. I think that a lot of women prefer MLM ships and popular culture for a lot of personal reasons. This is also what I came to the conclusion of in my thesis. The results show how slash is a way for women to explore sex without the limits and taboo the female body brings, and how breaking stereotypical masculine behavior, physically and mentally, is rewarding when creating exciting stories. I believe MLM romance and erotica creates a free space for women to explore and enjoy lust and sex and love and relationship that is hard to achieve when you carry the limitation, the lived experience, and the trauma of the female body and mind. Women also compare themselves a lot to other women, and it can be hard to enjoy heterosexual or lesbian romance because you automatically put the identification of yourself into the female subjects. When you have two male subjects, you can be both or neither, which is a special place to be while enjoying romance and erotica that a lot of women can't reach when there is a female involved. Like, this is not exclusive for women. Like, I think this applies to a lot of men too, but that's not my subject and that's not my experience, so I'm not going to talk about that. So, I do think there is a way to enjoy MLM relationships without it being fetishizing. You just have to take your responsibility as a reader and a creator. And when you talk about this subject, the thing that always comes up is that people say,
as long as it doesn't affect real people.
The thing is, these things always affect real people. For homosexual men, I believe one of the real consequences is that people, fans, and friends and family as well, see it as their right to know who's the top and who's the bottom. I'm not saying this is the only consequence fetishization of gay men gets. I think it's one of them. I don't think the only reason for this is fetishization of gay men in the fandom, but I do think everything is intertwined. Editing this, I just must add that I'm aware that the right to know sexual positions of queers also affects sapphics a lot. It just affects sapphics in a completely different way. And that's a whole other discussion that I'm not going to get into today. So back to the males. I mean, the problem goes way deeper than fetishization within the fandom. I know this. It comes from heteronormativity. People need to know who's the man and who's the woman because they can't think of it in a different way. That people could either switch, therefore not conforming to heteronormative gender roles, or even more scary, that people could have sex in queer ways and with queer practices that completely eliminates the top-bottom experience, therefore not conforming to heteronormative gender roles. Both of these things, switching or having sex outside of this dichotomy, is unbelievable for people to wrap their head around, and therefore people need to know to have a sense of calmness when they think about other people's sex life. No one is free of the top-bottom dichotomy, and therefore every representation is interesting to talk about. And this gets real-life consequences. I follow some gay men on social media, and every time they have a Q&A, I have yet to see a Q&A where someone doesn't ask them, a real-life couple, who's the top and who's the bottom. And every time they get visibly uncomfortable because it's a strange fucking question and it's none of your business. So when I read this scene, even though the sex wasn't described for smut or hotness or as a narrative point in any other way, their positions was stated as a fact so that the reader didn't have to worry. Now we knew they have penetrative sex and we knew who's the top and who's the bottom, so I can relax. I don't have to think about it. I feel that if you really want to challenge the way that people think about queer sex in any way, about the problems of the top and the bottom, then make it challenging. Make them talk about sex in an actual queer, challenging way. For me, who is queer and who's lived a queer life, I just feel like, but you just put them into top and bottom positions. It doesn't matter that you say that they are ready to be versatile. You made them tops. And I'm like, what's the point? Like, what was the point? Again, I know that the point of the book is this. I'm aware of the fact that a lot of my irritation from this scene comes from the fact that they call it donating. What you gonna donate? Your dick? Your sperm? Take it away from my welcoming body. I know it's gonna sound less aggressive than topping, but I'd rather be topped then have someone don't. I mean, I agree with Eliot Schrefer when he writes in this scene, like, it is not a valuable neutral term and words do matter, so we should talk about sex in a different way. I just feel like since it is very much so in society nowadays that people want to know what queer people do in their bedrooms, both for lesbians and for gay men, and we're not even going to go into discussion on what trans people have to go through when it comes to people demanding to know stuff about their private life. When this book just gives the reader the information of the sex when the sex wasn't necessary, I feel it plays a little bit into the hands of people who always want to know people's sex positions in queer relationships. And I don't think it's a book that fetishizes gay men. Again, I just want to make that clear. I know Eliot is a gay man, and who am I to judge, really? This is my channel, I can do whatever I want. To bring it back to what this video was originally about, I really enjoy this book. The characters, as said, not so much, the relationship not so much, but I still really recommend it. It was an entertaining, creepy sci-fi thriller. So yeah, that was it for me. I'll see you around eventually.